Morning, it's Tuesday, April 9th. We're in Parsha Sazria Mitzorah. This week is a double portion, dealing, as I said last night, it starts off dealing with the laws of when a woman gives birth. She is required for a certain amount of days. She's considered tamei, and then she has to bring various sacrifices. Leading from that, we talk about the terrible infliction of tsaras. Tsaras is a skin condition which comes out if you violate the laws of Lashon Hara, and actually this affliction can happen on your skin. It can happen in your clothes. It can happen in the walls of your house, and it's a very complicated set of laws that go with it. And who is the decision maker? Who decides if you the Kohen, the priest, right? If you have a rash, you think there's a rash on your body, you don't go to the doctor.
If I have a rash on my body, I should get a Lenny.
Yeah, you go to a Kohen, and depending on the coloring and the hairs and everything, so and how long it lasts, and so on and so forth, the Kohen makes a decision, and the Kohen decides whether you are pure or impure. Now, one of the important things is depth of field. You know what depth of field is? Depth of field, if you're a camera buff, you know what depth of field means. It means when you take a picture, is it one-dimensional? If it's two-dimensional or three-dimensional, you have a perspective. Something is closer and something is further. You know, there are tricks that you can do to make something appear further and closer, even on a single dimension, the way you draw it. But in real life, if I took a picture of you guys, then you would be closer than the bima, and anybody can plainly see that. But when you look at a skin condition, you have to be able to figure out what is higher. Is the skin higher than the rash, or is the rash lower or higher? So for this, you need to have very good eyesight. Now, the Torah says that is very specific. If I could find that exact pasuk, probably won't. But it talks about that the Kohen has to see it with his eyes. It uses plural. So therefore, from that we have a halacha that it says that if a Kohen is blind on one eye, he's no good.
Right, because you can't tell them.
Because,
right.
Actually,
binocular vision.
It actually doesn't say that, but you're correct. That's what I would think. That's the reason. That you don't have a perspective on the rash. Also, there's another thing that disqualifies a Kohen, and that is if he has weak eyes. If he has weak eyes, then he also can't do the job. You're not going to go to a surgeon to operate on you if he has weak hands or if his hands are trembling. So if his eyes are no good, if it's weak, you can't go into him either. Now the question arises, what about if he's weak on just one eye? By the way, the reason I'm learning these laws, morning Alan, the reason I'm learning these laws because I want you to get a feeling and really a pleasure out of seeing how things that we think don't apply to us can apply to us, and how every single thing in our lives has some ramification in Torah and in halacha, and everything has its place in a Jewish person's life. It's even something as mundane as we'll talk about in a second. So the question arises again, if a Kohen is weak on just one eye, is he qualified to do the job? So the halacha is that if he's weak on one eye, he can still do it. Because the Mishnah is specific, and it says that if he's blind on one eye, or if he's weak on both eyes. So one eye only disqualifies him if he's totally blind. Now, the big question is, here's the big question. Can anybody guess what the next question is? What if he wears glasses?
But they didn't, that's what I was going to say, but they don't have glass back
They
then.
did have.
They did?
And even if they didn't have it then, how would we rule it today?
Well, then it should be fine.
Okay.
Because you see 20
Now-
glasses.
So you're saying it should be fine. I'll wait for a second for Alan to come here. Alan, we're talking about a Kohen who, if you have tsaras, if you have, like I said yesterday,
Right.
biblical leprosy, and let me be clear, it's not leprosy, but we don't have another word for it, so that's what I'm going to use. Let me see if the art scroll gives it a word. No, doesn't have an English word for it. It calls it tsaras. Okay.
I guess that's a word.
Yeah. So he has to be able to see it. So if he's blind on one eye, he can't do the job. You can't go to the Kohen. If he's weak on both eyes, you can't go to him. If he's weak on just one eye, you can go to him. So the question arises: what happens if he has to wear glasses? Can he do the job? So Rebbitzin Stern says that yes, glasses qualify. You can use it.
I say that.
Huh?
I say that.
Because look at
And
everybody here
Tad,
wears
just to
glasses.
be contradictive, says no. Do you have any other reason, or just to
No.
give me another
Because
opinion, which is fine?
In that period, they wanted to be a natural thing, with
Okay.
your eyes
Okay.
gotta be good.
So This
Places may or may not correct it.
now.
I don't know if they had glasses back then.
They did.
Okay, so I'll show you a Gemara in the first Masechta Brachas. You know, the Navy, if you wanted to be a Navy pilot, you had to have 20/20 vision. If you wore glasses, it was no good. Recently, by the way, I heard recently that if you had 20/30 vision and glasses corrected you to 20/20, they allowed you. That was something they adjusted their ruling. But minimum, you had to have 20/30 vision. Okay, you know what 20/20 means? What does that number mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Distance and close up.
Right. It's the measurement of how large a letter is at what distance. And I'm not sure if it's 20 meters or 20 centimeters, whatever. But anyway, it's distance and size of lettering. It's also the name of a TV show, I think. But I don't think that's what I'm... So here's a Gemara in Brachas. You know, Brachas deals with, the first parak in Brachas deals with what? Brachas is the first volume of the written law, the oral law, right? Brachas means what? Blessings. But the first part of it doesn't necessarily deal with blessing. What does it deal with? The first words. First thing, you open up a Gemara, it talks about Krishma, when you have to read Krishma. Again, as a review, we spoke about this a couple of times. We have to, it's a biblical commandment to say Krishma 2 times a day. When it says in the Torah, we say it every day in Krishma, b'shokvach v'kamecha, when you lay down and when you get up. So,
It's Shema, isn't it?
Kriya Shema means to read the Shema.
Yeah, Shema, okay.
To read the Shema.
I got it.
So you got to say a minimum of 2 times a day.
Yeah, minimum.
I
Some
thought
people,
you actually say it 4 times.
no, we actually say it, some people say it when they go to sleep, a 3rd time. There is no other time you say it.
There's the morning
But
Shema.
you say the Shema. Say the Shema when you get up. You say the Shema in Shachar.
When you get up, you don't say it.
And it's in
Or
Mark.
maybe some people say it.
Well, the
Okay.
morning Shema, they do it here.
Yeah.
Even quickly, but
The short version. Yeah.
Right. That's why I
The reason we say it is because to make sure you get it in, and to get it in also on time, because there's a certain period of time you got to get it in by. You cannot say it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You've missed the period. There's a certain period when you can say that Shema. And in many shuls,
Yeah, there's a whole.
including there's a sign,
Yeah.
when you can say. So let me just get back to this. So we're talking about glasses. Now there's a halacha that you're not allowed to say that when you say Krishma, you have to be in an appropriate place. So it lists a whole bunch of places where you're not allowed to say Krishma.
The bathroom.
All kinds of places. Okay, slew of places. Certain places where there's foul smells. Certain places where a tannery, let's say, or obviously a bathroom. And then you're also not allowed to say it in front of a naked person, male or female. You're not allowed to say it.
Get your clothes on, sucker. Said Shema.
Or you're not allowed to say it. Now the Gemara actually asks, now why can't you say it in front of a naked person? I mean, it's part of your body. I mean, most people are naked underneath their clothes.
Yeah, but it's distracting, perhaps, your mind is.
Well, let's say if it wasn't. Anyway, because the Torah says so. A lot of things we give reasons to,
Right.
but
Basically,
we try to give reasons.
Right.
But the Torah says that v'lo yira b'cha erves dov, you should not see any nakedness. So therefore, you can't say Krishma at that time. So the Gemara asks, what about if somebody's standing naked behind a glass?
Like behind a shower setting, or.
Yeah, a glass door. And Rashi, it uses the word ashishis,
If you can see through the glass.
kolomar mechitza zechuchis, a glass partition, or klaf dak, or a very thin piece of parchment that's see-through, like what do they call it, onion paper, or sheer paper that you can see through. If somebody stands on the other side of that, can you say Krishma?
No.
And the Gemara says what? As Alan says, no. Why? Because it says you should not see any nakedness, and you can still see it. So the fact that there is something separating you,
It's like a machitza.
exactly, mechitza, and we can talk about, right away here in shul, what's considered a mechitza. Is it a physical divider, or is it something that prohibits one person from looking through? And obviously, we have mechitzas which are made out of glass, which some say that qualifies as a mechitza, and some say no, that you can see through. And there's a slew of halachas. We'll get into some of them today as to whether glass is considered a partition or not. Specifically, the question is.
I was always raised it wasn't.
Question is, when you say Krishma, the Gemara says that you cannot. Glass is not considered a good enough partition, and you can't say Krishma. So from this, those that say that if you wear glasses is now, how do we apply that to glasses? We were talking about
Yes.
whether.
No.
Yeah.
So, do you think from this, are you going to say wearing glasses is good or is not good?
Yes.
Not good.
Is good.
Not good. It's the
These
barrier.
two are comedy.
So, obviously, the answer is that it is good, because
Because if you
the
can see
Gemara
through it,
says that if you can
Shema, then
see through for Shema, then you still have vision, and if you have vision,
it counts.
then a Kohen should be able to use it. But it's not so simple. Now let's see if we can come up, we have a few minutes, let's see if we can come up with a distinction between the two of them. Why would you possibly say that as far as saying Krishma, if you're separated by somebody who is unclothed, you still can't say Krishma because you can see. But nevertheless, as far as the Kohen goes, he won't be able to use it.
You won't be able to use it?
Yeah. So the answer is like this, because we're always short on time.
Okay.
The answer is like this. The answer is that when it comes to Krishma, the Torah says, as somebody said it before, the Torah says you can't say it in front of somebody who's naked because you'll be distracted. Now, you don't have to have perfect perfect vision of this person who's undressed. Assuming you only had 99% vision or 90% vision, it's still going to be a distraction. It's still going to be something which doesn't sit right, that you're davening here and there's a naked person on the other side of the glass, and maybe he's a little fuzzy or blurry, but it's still...
You're going to be thinking about it.
Either you'll be thinking about it, or it just doesn't look right. Somebody walks in and he sees there's a naked man standing there, So, however, it is possible, certainly in those times, glasses were not prescription glasses. It is possible that if a Kohen wears glasses, his vision is not going to be perfect. It may be impaired. And we have the halacha that if both of his eyes are weak or impaired, you can't judge a nega, a tsaras. So here we have to worry about that this glass is going to give him some impairment, and therefore they say that no, a Kohen cannot wear glasses. Okay? Now, okay. Now,
one of the few terms, huh?
Here is something. There's several applications. Now, and where do they bring a proof from? There's actually another Gemara. I think it's a Gemara that in the olden times, how did they know when there was a new moon? When there were Adam that went and two witnesses went, and they went on a high mountain, and they would see the new moon, and then it would be Rosh Chodesh. And over there, the halacha is that if they saw it through glass, and I have to go now look. I'm not sure whether it's talking about just looking through a glass. Maybe they were talking about the reflection. In other words, there was a piece of glass on the floor,
right,
and they would see from the reflection, almost like a mirror. I'm not sure if they had actual mirrors at the time. But nevertheless, over there it says that if you see something through glass, it's not considered that the witnesses actually saw the moon. They have to have a direct view of the moon. And if they don't have a direct view, whether it's through reflection or actually looking through a glass, over there it says that you cannot, that's not good enough. When we do the blessing of the moon, we go outside and we look up at the moon. We don't look at it through the window. I've never seen that done.
If the clouds are out, you can't do it.
What?
If the clouds are out, you can't do it.
If the clouds are out, you can't do it. So we see that glass, although it acts as a part, although we say you can see through it when it comes to Krishma, when it comes to real halacha things, that where you have to have perfect vision, if you're looking through glasses, it's not good enough. Now, here is another interesting question. There are halachas. That door is open. I came in through that door. Oh, actually, yeah. Then it probably locked itself. In which case, it's a sign that they should have been. Actually, I now remember I came in through that door. Yeah. Okay, my mistake. If there's halacha, what if you're reading from a? Yeah, no. I actually came in through this door today morning. What if you're reading from a Sefer Torah, and there's a piece of wax? In the olden days they didn't have lights. Maybe at some point somebody had a candle and a piece of wax went on a letter. But you can, wax when it hardens, it becomes sometimes translucent.
But you can take the letter off with it.
Oh, so there's a whole question whether you can take the letter off on at all.
You can't.
On Shabbos there's a question for sure, but even in the weekdays there's a question whether you can take the letter off. And the reason there's a question you can take the letter off, because there's a separate halacha. Here's a very interesting halacha. We have to write a Sefer Torah, right? So what if somebody didn't want to write a Sefer Torah? Somebody took a ink and put a glob of ink on. Let's say he wanted to write an aleph. He put a glob of ink on the parchment, and then he carved away the spaces around the aleph, and what you had left was an aleph.
Right.
You understand? He did it the reverse. It's no good. You have to write the letter. You can't have the letter appear by itself. So that's why some people say that if a wax fell on a Sefer Torah, you don't, in effect, you don't have let's assume you couldn't see the letter.
You damaged it.
So now you're taking off the wax, now the letter appeared by itself, you didn't write it. So people say that you can't do that. That is not the halacha. The halacha is that since it was there originally, so all you're doing is bringing back what was there before, so it's not like you're creating a new letter. But nevertheless, the question was whether you can read through that piece of wax.
Mendy, you can repair it, correct?
You can repair it, yeah, but the question, let's just get back to this. If you have a translucent piece of wax, or you're allowed to read the Sefer Torah between that? And is there a distinction between that and wearing glasses? Or you're allowed to wear glasses when you read the Sefer Torah? It's not so easy, because somebody at one point wanted to make it easier for people to read the Sefer Torah with all the constellations, with all the notes. Let's take a piece of lucite, a piece of glass. Let's put on all the notes on it, lay it over the Sefer Torah, a template, and now you'll be able to read it, and it'll be perfect. Or you're allowed to do that. And then the answer is, we don't do it because you can't read through a glass. Because your eyes have to actually see the Sefer Torah, so you can't do it through a video, and you can't do it through a monitor. So we see that this business of wearing glasses, whether it's considered actually seeing the object or not, is not so simple as anything else, and we're going to have to stop here. Have a good day. Okay, bye.